So good morning and welcome, everybody. We're so glad that so many of you are able to join us. We're really excited about this event, and hats off to Martha Barvin, who's helped us to organize today and allow us to be joining with you in person and virtual and from Israel and all the things that our technology has allowed us to do. This is now, I think, the second time we've used this space in the Finger Boardroom for a hybrid experience with speakers who are not in the room, but several of us who are, and others who are online all over from Zoom, as well as our guests from Israel. So it's a pleasure to welcome all of you. If you don't know me, I'm David Scott. I'm the Director of Lifelong Learning and Engagement here, and really working with the Israel Advocacy Committee to provide this amazing program and others. And I just want to say thank you again to our co-chairs. Ruth Sherman is here to my left as well, and Martha Barvin, of course, and Shelley and Jeff Lewis, who are also our co-chairs, and others who are here on behalf of the Israel Advocacy Committee and supporting what we do within Israel Advocacy at the Congregation Beth Israel. There's a lot of other Israel-related programming coming up in the next few weeks and into next year, culminating in our next journey to Israel, our in-person trip that we're going to be taking May 8th to the 18th. It's not a trip, it's a journey. And we're excited to have, I think now there's 33. And I just got an email this morning that 2 more people will be joining us as well. So 35 and possibly a few more too who have expressed interest. So it's going to be a wonderful group. If you're interested, you haven't yet registered. We have several of us as well who are already signed up in the room and will be joining us, and others I see online who are also attending. And we'd love to welcome you and include you in the group. It's going to be a fabulous experience. On January 9th, we have our next Israel Advocacy program that Ruth is going to be highlighting. You want to share just a moment about what that's going to look like?
Oh, thank you so much. Sure. We're talking about Israel's innovations in response to COVID-19. We have 3 highly regarded scientists who will be with us to talk about their work and their response from different aspects. They've been so gracious and lovely. It's a pleasure to work with the Israelis to bring information to our congregants. So, and thanks to David's leadership and my other co-chairs. It's a wonderful group.
It'll be great. We're going to pre-record those 3 sessions, play them for everybody, have discussion, and what Israel has done with response to COVID and their innovations is obviously unparalleled in the world. It's really amazing. On January 30th and February 13th, we'll be reviving our online tour to Israel. So those of us who went last year to the 3 sessions led by Liana Rothstein, our Israel guide, she'll be back for 2 more sessions as we gear up to go in person. So everybody's welcome and invited to January 30th and February 13th for the next trip, a virtual experience. And then February 18th to the 20th, we're going to be welcoming Daniel Pomerantz, who is the CEO of honestreporting.com. So he'll be able to join us in person here from Israel as we gather together for a weekend. So a lot of exciting Israel-related programming over the next several weeks and months. And with that, I don't want to take any more time from our guests who are here today, but I want to let Martha provide some words of introduction. So Martha, take it away. I'm going to pivot the camera to you, and now you are able to welcome us.
Okay, thank you, David, and thank you, Rabbi Lyon. So Galit Karni is the founder and CEO of the UAE Israel Joint Innovation Office. After founding and selling 2 of his companies, he was an active angel investor in the first ever Israeli company sold to Google. He then founded Innovation Israel, where he promoted Israeli technology and innovation worldwide. Throughout the years, Mr. Carney brought hundreds of business people, delegations, and foreign governments to Israel while showcasing Israel's innovation and technology. Mr. Carney's passions include lecturing about his personal startup nation story abroad and transforming them into lovers of Israel. Enrich Simmerman is a Portuguese journalist who works as the Middle East correspondent for the Antena 3 and La Vanguardia. He also acts as a correspondent for the Portuguese channel SIC and has made several appearances on the BBC. He's an award-winning journalist and university lecturer who works in 5 languages and has covered current affairs in the Middle East for about 25 years. Pope Francis named him Angel of Peace in enabling His Highness's pilgrimage to the Middle East. and assisting in a prayer for peace event which just took place in the Vatican. He also wrote the book Francis, From Rome to Jerusalem, depicting the behind the scenes of the papal visit. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for coming.
Welcome. Gilad, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. We
Wonderful.
can hear and see you, please.
Okay.
Thank you for being with us.
Wonderful. So thank you very much, Martha, David, Rabbi, and the Israel Advocacy Committee. I'm very, very excited to be with you this morning. I'm very happy to do these Zoom calls. And whenever I get to meet and talk to people, especially from abroad, it gives me great pleasure to speak about what I do in Israel and the UAE, in that part of the world. I'm very hopeful that maybe I can meet a part of the group in May when you're going to be here and take the journey with you. I can tell you that every day in Israel is a journey, and things are very dynamic here. So thank you so much for having me, having Enrique, and I hope we're going to have an interesting, I think we have less than an hour this morning discussion. Thank you for taking the time on your Sunday and your day off to listen to us. So I'm going to start off maybe 10-15 minute talk, give you an introduction of the UAE and Israel relations, and then let Enrique, my good friend, take his part of it. And then we're very interested in taking questions and answers and making it more dynamic and digging in and seeing what you're interested in. So before the Abrams Accord that were signed almost a year and a half ago, the UAE and Israel has always had relationships. And they were secret, but they were always there. And the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, is a rising regional power in the Middle East with great political and economic stability. This is something that Israel always saw as part of the moderate Islamic countries that were there. And the UAE was actually founded exactly 50 years ago. They celebrated 50 years of independence this month. They were founded in 1971 as an independent federal state consisting of 7 federal emirates. Among the 7, you probably know the most famous are Abu Dhabi and Dubai, that are mostly known and influential both politically and economically. Now, the population of Israel and the UAE is very, very similar. We're both 9.2 million people. The only difference is that the UAE, more than 80% of their residents are foreign nationals. They're not local Emiratis. It's a truly international country, and specifically in Dubai, when you come there, it's one of a kind. It's a truly international city. And I think talking about the Middle East and talking about the neighbors that Israel has, this is a great opportunity because they're kind of a different beast than what we're used to. Now, the UAE was established 23 years after the Israeli independence. And it's very important to note that they never took part in any wars against Israel. They always lined up with the Arab League and the resolutions that sometimes were against Israel with the Israel-Palestinian conflict, but they never took an active part in it. And the geographical conditions of both countries that we're so far away, we don't share border together, are also an important factor of understanding the nature of the relationship between the two countries. And the UAE is geographically distanced from Israel, so the possibility of conflict with them is unlikely, not now and not in the foreseen future. Also, in the international arena, both countries, both Israel and the UAE, are considered pro-Americans. And so that's also one thing that we shared in common always. This is, and I'm talking before the Abrams Accord was signed. And despite the geographical distance, and And can everybody put themselves on mute? I'm just hearing some people speak. So despite the geographical distance and the ideological gap between a Muslim country and a Jewish country, Israel and the UAE shared a lot of common interest that can be a reason for tight cooperation, not only now after the agreement, but in the last 50 years as well. And the main reasons that I can see are political and security objectives, but also common trade relationships and interests, technology, know-how, which basically both those political and security objectives and the trade relations set the tone for the Abrams Accord. And when we're talking about the political reasons, I narrowed it down to basically two. Number one is kind of the elephant in the room, which is Iran and the Iran nuclear program. Both countries fully object the Iran nuclear program, where Israel obviously is in the forefront of it. And the moderate Arab countries see that, and some of those countries want to be on the right side of things. And I think, when we have a mutual enemy, that's when friends and allies are made. And number two is the Islamic radicalization that is happening all over the world. We see it in Europe, but in particularly we see it in the Middle East, such as the Muslim Brotherhood and other factors there, which is a political threat to the stability and the security for both countries. Also, there are security reasons why Israel and the UAE always had relationships together, which has to do with security. There's always been very close collaboration between the Israeli security forces, specifically the Israeli Mossad, and the UAE security forces. It's always being taken in place. And we also know that the UAE is very interesting and has always been interested in Israeli security products and drones. So we know there's always been relationship between the two countries, not necessarily relationships that you can talk about, not relationships that were in the news and TV, but we were aware of Israelis flying to Dubai. We're aware of meetings happening in Europe. We're aware of business being done between the two countries. Always. So we've always had some kind of a warm relationship with the Emiratis. Also, the UAE has a huge interest and a lot of money in building a world-class air force. Not only do they need some of the Israeli know-how, but it was also very important for the UAE to be able to buy F-16 aircraft from the USA. And I think that, as you might know, America sold the UAE F-16 airplanes right after the Abrams Accord. Now fast forward a few years later, basically following the Abrams Accord, I founded the UAE Israel Innovation Office with the intentions to facilitate trade between the two countries, but more specifically, sell Israeli technology not only to the UAE, but to other moderate countries or other Muslim countries in the Gulf region that not necessarily have relationships with Israel. And I can tell you that I have a foreign passport, and I've been to Dubai and I've been to the UAE and other countries a lot of times and prior to the agreements, and build amazing relationships there. And since it opened up, a lot of Israelis have been wanting to do business in the UAE, and it's a struggle. Although the kind of the floodgates have opened, I think there's a lot of differences between the way that we do business, Israelis and Emiratis. And the Israelis are very, very similar to Americans. There's a word for those of you Israelis that or know Hebrew, there's a word called tachles, which is right here, right now, let's talk, let's put everything on the table. And as opposed to the Emiratis, which are more relationship driven. So an Israeli might, once the Abraham's Accord were signed, Israeli businessmen were flocking Dubai by, airplane loads, and they were landing in Dubai, and they're just hoping to pitch their companies, sign an MOU or sign, joint ventures with Emirati counterparts, but that's not the way that it happens. When we're digging down to it and doing business with Emiratis, it's all about relationships. Israelis love to fly out, do their business meetings, finish them, and then on their leisure time, do it by themselves. And with the local Emiratis, it's totally different. If I may say, first, they got to trust you. They got to build relationships. This is a process that can take not only weeks or months, but years as well. And I'm sure Enrique can attest to that as well by doing business there for years. And they got to know who you are. They'll introduce you to their families. So that's one huge difference that's happening that between Israeli businessmen and the Emiratis. Another thing that I can point out, and I was thinking about this lecture, is what else are we facilitating with? So Israelis are very opportunistic. They'll go about their life, and if there's a business opportunity or an opportunity to start a new company or start a startup, they'll go right ahead and pivot. In the UAE, it's totally different. They are very, very strategic. And where I'm talking strategy, I'm not talking only a 1-year plan, 3-year plan, but they also have a 30 and a 50-year plan, both on the government side, but also on the corporate and business side as well. So not only does the Israeli entrepreneur need to have a good business plan and sellable, but they also need to fit the strategy that the UAE is taking their country. And one more thing that the UAE is very, very big on is opening local offices. So if you're an Israeli entrepreneur and you want to do business there, you have to open a local office. They're very big on getting a local Emirati to be your partner there. Now, some of the industries, so we're talking about doing business. I've been active there, like I said, for about 1.5 years. We've been very known, but we've been active in that part of the world. A lot of the technology and a lot of the sectors that we look upon and that are interesting there are food tech and the food supply chain. Today, 90% of the food in the UAE is imported. They want to stop that. What are technology that they're looking into from Israeli companies? What are technology and what are solutions and know-how, and alternative energy sources, industry development, and of course, cybersecurity, digital services, drone technology, fintech, insurance tech. And we see those deals being done. And one more thing, and maybe I'll add there and end there and let Enrique speak, and then I'll be very interested in taking your questions, we have to look at the relationship between the UAE and Israel, not only in the spectrum of Dubai and Tel Aviv, but we have to look into the entire Gulf states. And, we've been hearing about a lot of other countries in that region that might sign treaties with Israel as well. But like always, the business community is already at the forefront of that. I can tell you that I'm involved with Israeli businesses, deep Israeli technologies that are selling their products to those states already. In the past, only the very, very big Israeli industries were able to sell to that part of the world. You either take a subsidiary at a third country and sell it through a European entity. But today, even a two-man operation can go to Dubai, find a local distributor and sell those to Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, other countries. And I can attest that we have a lot of Israeli companies that are using distributors in Dubai to sell their products, to sell their services, to sell their know-how. And I must also mention that it's mainly one way, right? Israel mainly exports to that part of the world. We don't see a lot, or I haven't seen any imports or any technology being driven into Israel, but it's only one way there. And I'm very, very optimistic about the future. I think this is the real deal. It's definitely a game changer. And I think once and if the Saudi Arabia deal also comes through, it's life-changing for a lot of Israeli companies and what it's going to do to the GDP here. But I must tell you that Israeli businesses are already there. So with that optimistic point of view, I'll turn it to Enrique. So we have plenty of time for Q&A.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gilad. I learned many things with you too. You know, good morning to you all, and it's really a pleasure and an honor to be with you here. I wanted to tell you something more about me in 30 seconds, because I came to Israel from Portugal and Spain when I was 16, just to visit. And then I sent a telegram to my parents and I told them that I stay here. Since then, I'm here, and I tell my son that if he would do that to me, I would be very cross. But anyway, this is the reality, and I want to tell you two things. I was in Saudi Arabia and in the Emirates a year and a half ago, as an Israeli, by the way, before the agreements, and I had very deep conversations with people there who told me, leaders, princes in both countries, who said to me the same thing. They said, look, Enrique, we have already some relation, as Gilad said, and he's right. Hundreds of Israeli companies are already working for a while, I think more than a decade, in different countries, using joint ventures with foreign countries, with foreign companies under their flags, Canadian, French, Spanish, etc. But these are Israeli, and everybody knows these are Israeli working there. So they said to me, look, we want to build a tree, but the only root we have in our tree until then, it was the root of security and defense and intelligence. And you can't have a strong tree only with one root. So bring us more roots, bring us commerce, bring industry, academic cooperation, culture, sports, which is a very important tool, as we are seeing in Qatar. I was last week in Qatar for a week, preparing a report about the World Cup, Football World Cup, which is a very big event that is going to take place in Doha, in Qatar next year, in November and December. So sports is really important in these countries as a diplomatic tool. I would call it public diplomacy in a way. So they said, we need all this to have a strong tree in the future. Now, I want to tell you about two brothers. One, his name is Saud bin Faisal, and he was the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia for 40 years. 10 years ago, I was in an event of the United Nations. I was invited to moderate the Forum of Alliance of Civilizations. And in this event, after my closure, and I was the only Israeli there, the gentleman, Saud bin Faisal, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, came to me. He just walked across, he crossed the whole stage and said, Mr. Zimmerman, please tell your friends that our airspace is open. I understood immediately. What was he talking about? He was talking about Iran, about the possibility of an Israeli attack against the nuclear project of Iran. So I replied, Your Highness, I'm not a pilot. So he said, yes, yes, yes. He made a sign and he left. 4 years later, I was invited by his brother to Washington, Prince Turki Al Faisal, who was the head of the Saudi intelligence for 20 years. He invited me. I thought it was an interview, but no, it was a long conversation of 1 hour and a half, which I think changed the way I perceive the Middle East. And that happened when he said to me, after asking me many questions about my children and the fact they were supposed to go to the army and my past, why did I leave Europe to come to a country like Israel? And I explained to him everything. So then he said, now please ask whatever you want. And I came there with a very specific question. I said, Your Highness, in the 20th century, the majority of the Arab leadership had one thing in common, the will to erase Israel from the map. What happened in the 21st century that you are proposing to Israel something like an agreement, a normalization? So he explained to me something that I think it is the main thing that we should remember. Why? Why these agreements? Why the Abraham Accords a year and 1 month, 2 months ago? How did it happen? What changed? Why was the world surprised by that? First, like Gilad said before, the fact that we have common enemies. When I'm in the Gulf, they always look and they say, you see those lights there? This is Iran, 15 minutes from here. If we don't have a very strong support from the United States, from Israel, we can be attacked by them and they can take our gas and our oil. So we have common enemies. You're not the only one being threatened, they said to me. But then they said, we also have Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, Daesh, that want to change our governments. They want to attack us also from inside, and they also hate you. So we have common enemies. That's the first thing. That was not new for me. But then he said something that was completely new for me. He said already in the Yom Kippur War, he called it the October War in 1973, we understood there is no military option against Israel. The Israelis started the war on their knees, and after weeks, they won. So he said, Prince Turki Al Faisal, Israel is now the strongest country between Gibraltar and Indonesia. So we don't have a military option. If you can beat them, join them. Third, he said, you are the startup nation. You developed technologies, startups, also as Gilad explained. We have something like more than 5,000 startups in this small country, more companies in the NASDAQ than the whole 27 countries of the European Union. So he said, we want to have not only the startup nation, but the startup region. We want joint ventures with your companies. We want to develop things together. And then something that is remarkable when you visit the Gulf, those countries, Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain, all of them, the 6 GCC countries, when you go there, and I'm also the president of the Chamber of Commerce, Israel, GCC, which means these 6 countries led by Saudi Arabia, when I go there, I see mainly young people. 30% of the population are under 30. So for them, the wars of the 20th century are like the Roman wars, really. It's the past. It's the very, very far past. So they say we should go forward. We should enjoy. They dream about Tel Aviv. They want to live. They want to come to Tel Aviv for a weekend to enjoy. Tel Aviv, you know, is an icon for many, many youngsters in Europe and also now in the Middle East. Then there is another reason, which is the COVID-19. We have here in the last 2 years, this pandemic, which is affecting everyone. It's not going to be finished anywhere until it will be finished everywhere. And in the Chamber of Commerce that I lead, we did some meetings of doctors, Israeli doctors, including worldwide experts on diabetes and other risk factors of COVID-19. And they met in a webinar 130 doctors from the whole Arab world, including countries like Algeria or Yemen that are enemies, technically, officially, of Israel. And they debated about strategies to fight against COVID-19 and also new technologies to do it. I must tell you that since then, they work together. And since then, I know that some of the doctors are keeping in contact because it's really a common interest to fight against COVID-19. So this is another point that I think is really, really important. Now, some days ago, there was a delegation from the Gulf in Israel of 20 young people from the UAE, from Bahrain, Egypt, and Morocco, together with young people from Israel and with an NGO called Leaders of Tomorrow. You should see it was not easy. It was a little bit complicated in some moments, but it was full of hope. I think when you see these youngsters together, you see that history is changing in a way, that we still have spoilers, we still have those groups, terrorist groups led by Iran, like Hezbollah in Lebanon, with 150,000 missiles that are really pointed against Israeli territory. We have Hamas, we have Islamic Jihad, also financed and supported by Iran. But at the same time, I think we have a mass in the Arab world of people, mainly of youngsters, who look in a different way. I don't think they became members of the Zionist movement, but I think they understand that Israel is here to stay, that Israel is a superpower, and so they should do something with Israel. Now, for us, these agreements, in the business point of view, they give us very significant possibilities. In fact, the Gulf has access to about 2 billion people. An hour's flight away, those 2 billion can be reached in India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Iran, Bangladesh, East Africa, and now in a 3 hours flight, also Israel. You know, we have with Dubai and Abu Dhabi, something like 200 flights a month. We have a shuttle really between Israel and the UAE, which is quite remarkable. I mean, it's something unprecedented. And I think that, as Gilad said, we are going to see not only commerce and industry, we are seeing scientific cooperation, for instance, around subjects like placenta in healthcare, around international, we are talking about today artificial intelligence, which is the high tech of the future. We already have some agreements between the Weizmann Institute and the Center for Artificial Intelligence, Mohammed bin Zayed in Abu Dhabi. We are seeing desert agriculture. As Gilad said, they have a problem. They understood after COVID that they must be autonomous in the food point of view. And Israel has lots of experience on agriculture in the desert. So we can see many initiatives in that field, in irrigation, even producing water from the air. Yes, it is not science fiction. It already happens. There is an Israeli company that is already in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and in the other 5 Emirates, and they bring from the air water, and they can produce enough water for a whole village, for instance. So it's quite amazing. The list is very large and long, and I think the sky is the limit. Even, by the way, cooperation in space, which is happening now between Israel and the UAE. I think we are going to see 2 astronauts from the UAE in the next years landing in the moon, and there will be an Israeli flag because some of the Israeli technologies are going to be there. But the most important thing is that Israel and some Arab countries are trying to stabilize the region by building over troubled suns. And I think they are very troubled suns, mainly with Iran making some problems and some threats. And I think we are seeing a reshaping of alliances in the Middle East. The new perception on both sides that I feel is we tried everything through the war and we all failed. It's time to move on and try another strategy. By the way, I was the last journalist interviewing Yitzhak Rabin. the late Yitzhak Rabin, prime minister, 24 hours before his assassination. And already then, the November 3rd, 1995, Rabin said to me that the future of Israel goes through peace with the Gulf states and with North Africa, mainly with Morocco. He was right. But the fact is that it started then, this process, and I think now we are doing it, we are changing the paradigms, and we can build another narrative. You know, I teach in the Reichman University, which is the IDC of Herzliya. I already have students from the Emirates. The first one, his name is Mansour Al-Marzuki. He lives in the dorms of the university, and we are now trying to bring other students from other countries like Bahrain, Morocco, Egypt, Jordan, and even, as they say, inshallah, from Saudi Arabia. I hope this is going to happen. For them, in the business point of view, Israel is vital, because 5 more minutes and I'll finish and I'll give you the chance to ask questions. But anyway, for them, it is our strategic location is very important, because as you know, we are close to the Mediterranean, and Haifa is, the port of Haifa is ideally located in terms of moving goods. So when the British mandate ruled the region, there was an oil pipeline from the Middle East to Europe, which moved from northern Iraq, from Kurdistan to Haifa. Some people today dream about a rail station from the Emirates to Haifa via Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and the Palestinian Authority. Almost 3,000 kilometers opening the Mediterranean and Europe to the people of the Gulf. Don't forget that Cyprus in the European Union is only 25 minutes flight from Tel Aviv. So this is another possibility. I must tell you that something that was not published, not only the rail station, but also we are seeing now all kinds of trucks bringing America for the American trucks coming with merchandises from Abu Dhabi to Haifa, and from there with boats going to the United States, because President Biden was really concerned about the Iranian attacks against American boats in the Gulf. So we are seeing huge changes. I think that really, you know, when I was a young student, and I remember I came to Israel and in Tel Aviv University, I remember watching President Sadat from Egypt arriving to the airport, to the Lod airport. It was a huge change. I think that today we are living something similar, and I hope we'll have the intelligence, I would say the braveness to go on. I believe we are only in the 5th chapter of a book with more than 20 chapters. And I think the Abraham Accords must go forward. I have the feeling that some countries are already there. I had that feeling even in Qatar, which is a problematic country. And I was there last week as an Israeli, meeting authorities of the country. They sent to Israel many important messages. Like, for instance, we are small countries surrounded by enemies, and they also gave a name to the enemies, talking about Iran as a common enemy. Even Qatar, which hosts, as you know, members of Hamas in the past, today they are in Turkey, but from the Muslim Brothers, which is one of the Islamist groups that is a concern for us. You know, one of the leaders of the UAE said, Sheikh Zayed said that on the day the UAE exports the last barrel of oil, there should be a big celebration. He said that in his opinion, new industries, new technologies, and alternative energies will be developed at a time when oil will no longer be relevant. I think Israel is part of this strategy that they are building now, and that can change the future of our children here, of Gilad's children and of my children in this country. I think the Abraham Accords with Israel are based on the joint hope for writing a new horizon for the Middle East. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Wonderful. If you have questions or would like to share your thoughts or comments, please put them in the chat. You can also unmute yourselves and we'll take some questions. I know that both Gilad and Enrique are able to answer our questions. I want to just begin with one question. You shared how so much can be benefiting the other countries, including UAE, Bahrain, and others. I love and really appreciate, because I saw the technology at APAC, the policy conference, with the water that comes right out of the air. It's a box, and you push a button, and the water comes right out of an empty box. It's just unbelievable. What are the benefits, or the top 2 or 3 benefits, that Israel will get and will enjoy out of these relationships?
So if I may, I think, like I said when I spoke, it's not, the UAE is a gateway for Israel to go to a lot of other places. First of all, if we're talking, and I can talk specifically about trade and more specifically about technology. So my office is selling Israeli technology to that part of the world. The UAE is not a huge market. Asian Muslim countries are. Countries that we don't have peace with are. I think they are opening the gates to markets that we were never able to sell to, that are endless, selling our know-how, selling our services, selling our products. So Israel is gaining a lot of it. And also, when you're talking about other things, cultural and tourism. So I think that we're going to have a flock of tourists coming into Israel to visit the holy Muslim sites as well. But I think it's, like I said, it's mainly going to be one-sided, with Israel being the one selling the technology, selling the know-how, selling the Israeli products that are now in the forefront of technology and innovation in the world, to that part of the world, which we never put an emphasis in.
I would add, Gilad, that look, the main market we have today is the European Union, which is 500 million people. Now, in the Muslim world, we have 1,600,000,000 people. Now, imagine the moment that Saudi Arabia reaches in the next years agreements with Israel, and they will open the doors of the whole Muslim world. I can tell you that in our webinars with doctors, we already had doctors from Indonesia or from Malaysia, which are Muslim countries, not Arabic countries. And these are huge markets that can bring us a prosperity to the state of Israel, which is quite amazing. We are talking about hundreds of millions of new potential clients. And Israel has, as Gilad said, a huge technology, as we know. So we can bring them our technologies. We can develop things. I can tell you that I know we are already in our Chamber of Commerce involved in different, still very discrete projects of building Israeli hospitals in different countries, which is something that was unthinkable a year ago. Imagine Israeli technologies in healthcare and doctors and nurses in different Arab countries that were considered enemies only a year and a half ago. So I think it's obvious we are going to have really big new markets, and that will benefit the Israeli economy, which is going to grow, I think, potentially a lot in the next years.
Thank you both. Thank you. Wonderful answers. And there's a lot more questions coming in. I'll just read one. What can be learned from the UAE relationship that is not based upon non-changeable, non-generalizable UAE factors that can be used to deal with other Middle Eastern countries? And how does the Palestinian situation figure in?
So I'm not sure I understood the first part of the question. Maybe the person can elaborate on that, but regarding the Palestinian issue, the Israeli-Palestinian issue has always been there and will always be there. But like I mentioned, they do not live the Palestinian-Israeli conflict 24/7. They are a Muslim state, and obviously they take the part of the Palestinians, but it's not the main objective. And I think it's not a barrier of entry for the UAE and other countries like it used to be. The Arab League, they used to have the embargo on Israel. We see other countries having trade with Israel, such as, other peace treaties that we've had. And also, don't forget what I mentioned, that the UAE, 80% are not even Emiratis. A lot of them are not necessarily even Muslims. It's a truly international country, truly international city, Dubai, and they care about business. They care about innovation. And you know what? In this year and a few months since the Abrams Accord, there was one major operation in the Gaza Strip in the West Bank, Shomer Chomot it was called. I'm not sure what the name of it in English was. And I must tell you, the business was still going on as missiles were going on into Tel Aviv and into the Palestinian territories, into Gaza, I'm sorry. And I can tell you that, the amount of emails and calls maybe went down during that period, but after it was over, nothing changed. They still called me, they still wrote me emails, and business is business. And I think this is what business people can do where politicians lack. We can go past that.
Only in Israel. Amazing. Oh, Henrik, you had something to add?
Yes, I do. I really, I think the biggest test until now we had to these Abraham Accords was the war in Gaza in May. That operation was really a very tough moment. I'm going to give you an example. We are in the process of building a chamber of commerce, the United Arab Emirates, Israel. And the person who is the candidate to be the chairwoman is a lady, a very remarkable lady. Her name is Laila Al-Jasmi, very religious Muslim lady, but she wants to develop a relation with Israel. Well, she was called by her mother during the war in Gaza, and the mother said to her, "My daughter, I want to tell you that until you finish this relation with Israelis, I'm not going to invite you to my house, and I'm not going to speak with you anymore, because you're collaborating with the enemy, with those who are killing our brothers and sisters in Gaza." But at the same time, her father was listening to this very difficult speech, hate speech, I would say, said to her, "Look, I completely disagree. I want you to know that what you're doing is supported by Islam, by the modern Islam. We see it as something good, making peace with the Israelis. And I want to tell you something more. If you go to Israel to visit, I want to come with you." So this is the dilemma of Laila that she had. I think that this test was really strong. Gilad is right. Business continued. They happened during the war. But at the same time, if you ask me, what is the big implication for the future? I believe that after the Madrid conference was in 91, since then, we are trying to reach peace with Palestinians with the help of Americans, of Europeans, of Russians, of the UN. Nothing happened, really. The only chance I see in the near future of having some progress with the Palestinians is through the Arab world, mainly the quintet, which is Saudi Arabia, the host of the holy places, Mecca and Medina, with very huge importance in the Muslim world, Egypt, which is 1/4 of the Arab world, Jordan, also the United Arab Emirates, and maybe also Morocco. I think these 5 countries can bring the Palestinians in the future to the table of negotiations, and that's probably the only real chance under the support of the United States, but not only done by the United States.
Thank you. And I appreciate what you were saying in terms of the feedback from others, Henrik. And there's a couple of questions in the chat that sort of relate to that specifically. What do the UAE and others in the Abraham Accords think of the United States? And also just in general, how do you make up this gulf between those who are taught to hate Israel, the anti-Zionist, BDS, all of that? How does that impact the work that you're doing? And how can we do a better job in this country to promote Israel?
Well, if you allow me, I'll start here. I think that in general, we are seeing in the Emirates a big concern for the future. They want to be the avant-garde. They want to be the first and then bring others in the Arab world to the same place. They understand that doing business, but not only doing business, developing people-to-people agreements, allowing NGOs from the two countries cooperating. They always say, we don't want a bazaar. We don't want to buy from Israel only. We want to cooperate. You know, Gilad explained it, but I want to give you an example. They say always, we have a huge problem with this, with the watch, with time. We have a different pace. Israelis want everything yesterday. Israelis speak about quarters of years, 3 months, and they speak about generations. I was in a meeting recently with the Israelis and people from the 6 countries of the Gulf, and one of the Israeli generals said, "Gentlemen, in the long range, in 3 years, we must reach A, B, and C." And the answer of the Emirati general was, "You mean that in 10 years, in the short range, we must reach A, B." We live in different time zones. And until we learn to compromise, really, we learn to change, all of us, them and us Israelis, that we are always in a hurry. We are very frustrated when after 48 hours being in Dubai, we didn't come back to Israel with $1 billion investment. So we got a problem here, and we need to learn, all of us.
Thank you. Gilad, anything you'd like to add to that?
That's interesting.
No, I absolutely agree, what he said. And regarding the anti-Israel sentiment, when I travel to that part of the world and when I speak to people, what you describe about U.S. college campuses and what I know and what I've experienced elsewhere, you'd be surprised, not only by the people that I meet, but also the taxi drivers or anybody local there. I've never, ever experienced any anti-Israel or anti-Semitic remarks by anybody there. I think once the government decided that Israel and the UAE are going to be friends, everybody kind of shifted, maybe in a true democracy and free opinions to all. It's different. But it's nice to know that once it was decided that Israel is Dubai's friend or the UAE's friend, that said, we're friends. So I've never experienced that. And I think it's the moderate Muslim state. And I'm very happy that we're there. And I'm very happy to see that. I think the Jews in Israel are suffering much more in Europe and in US campuses than they are in moderate Muslim countries.
Thank you. And that sort of rounds out our conversation with maybe the last question, because I think that what you were talking about relates to this issue of the tachlis that Gilad, you were pointing out before. What is the actual sentiment on the ground? We have the business leaders, we have intellectuals, we have others who are running these countries on board, but what does the general population feel, and how can that, as Mark was just adding to the chat, how can that then be extended beyond to other countries, beyond UAE and Bahrain and the others that you discussed? Where do we go from here?
So maybe I'll start with that, Enrique, if I may.
Okay,
the tachlis is we have a common area, a common enemy, and I think this is what accelerated this relationship. And I'm not 100% sure if Iran wasn't a threat to the UAE as it is to Israel, we would be in the same place we are today. And I think this is where the world is going to take us in the next few years. It's a real problem for Israel and a real problem for the UAE as well. So the tachlis is, this is, the business side of it is an after effect of what's really important, the bigger picture of the geopolitical picture here, which unfortunately is Iran. But also the tachlis is that this is happening. Money, investments are happening. Enrique and I are part of it, and we're also working on a few deals together. Joint ventures are happening. Academia is happening. And I think the world is global, and now Israel is enjoying a little bit of what other countries were very lucky to enjoy, free trade with others. And I think this is only a start, and I'm unable to guess what the timeline is, but I can tell you this, that more countries will join. I'm not sure if it's a year from now or 50 years from now, but be on the lookout for more agreements in the Abraham Accord.
It's a nice message of hope. Enrique, how would you like to conclude?
I think the question that Mark is asking is very relevant, because we could ask, why do we see in the public opinion in Egypt and Jordan, countries we have already peace agreements with them for decades, and still we see a kind of antagonism against the agreements? And why don't we see this in Bahrain or in the UAE or even in Morocco? Well, I think the huge difference is in this enormous megaphone that is invading our lives, which is the social media. In the last decade, the Emirates and Bahrain, and I think now as we speak also Saudi Arabia, were in a way preparing the public opinion to this step. They were doing sending all kinds of messages in the social media, both Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and all these things. You can see bloggers, for instance, in Saudi Arabia, speaking highly about Israel and who have opinions, even hawkish opinions about the conflict, about the Palestinians. You see things that are really amazing in these countries. We didn't see that in Egypt. We didn't see that in Jordan. And that's why with those countries, it was a peace with the governments and with the elites and with the army, but not with the public opinion in the street. I hope that we are going to learn from that, and the peace that Gilad is talking about with other countries and the follow-up to the Abraham Accords will do it properly and will prepare the public opinion from both sides, and not only a peace between governments.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, gentlemen, I do want to say thank you. I know it's almost 8 o'clock or so where you are in the evening, and I know you have a full week ahead of you, but we wanted to say thank you for spending this time with us. We could have spent so much more, but it was just thrilling and so engaging and enlightening. We really appreciate you both being with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see everybody in Israel. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, or I'm sure Enrique, David, you can share our contact info with pleasure.
We'll definitely do that. Thank you both. We're going to be welcoming. Thank you so much. We're going to be welcoming everybody back on January 9th for our next event, our next Israel advocacy event, as we are exploring the COVID response. And I'm just also very grateful that our own local COVID expert, Dr. Ed Septimus, will be with us too to help navigate the conversation and engage with us as well, and facilitate discussion as we hear more about how Israel is responding to these challenging situations and the innovation that goes into it. So really grateful to all of you, and thank you so much for being with us. We're going to conclude the program as we thank you everybody for being with us, and see you soon in a couple of weeks. Excellent. Thank you all.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Very.
Thank you, David. This was amazing.